Hey guys! Alright, so for this video, I'm going to be just doing a quick overview on how to tell time on an analog clock. An analog clock is different from a digital clock. A digital clock is the kind of clock where it says the number and then like a colon and then the minute. So it'd be say like 3 colon 32 and you know it's 3:32. An analog clock is a clock that has those hands. So we're going to do a quick overview on how to read those because you're going to need to know how to read an analog clock when we talk about elapsed time in the next video. You're also going to know how to read an analog clock when we talk about measuring angles in geometry. We're going to start talking about angles next unit. Alright, so just a quick overview. Even if you already know this, I'd really appreciate if you watched the video and just reviewed it with me. Okay, so this is an analog clock. The long hand right here is what we call the minute hand. It shows the minutes. So each section on a clock is 1 minute. And the sections in between the big numbers are 5 minutes. So this is 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So each time the big hand moves to one of these little spots between the 12 and the 1, it's moving up 1 minute. And whenever the big hand moves between like the 1 and the 2, it's moved 5 minutes. Okay? There are 60 minutes in an hour, so sometimes it helps if you replace these numbers with their multiples of 5. So like if you start at 1, 1 times 5 is 5, 2 times 5 is 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. And you can see in our clock in the classroom that I actually put the minute numbers around the hour numbers, so you can kind of tell a little bit easier what minute the long hand is pointing to. Okay? Alright, so what about the little hand? Because there's always 2 hands on a clock. You have the long one and you have the short one. Well, the little hand measures the hour and uses the numbers on the clock face. It moves very slowly, but the hour hand is always moving. So it takes a full hour to move between the 2 numbers. So it takes a whole hour for the little hand, mind you, to move between the 4 and the 5. It takes 5 minutes for the long hand to move between the 4 and the 5. So every time the big hand moves 1 minute, the little hand moves just a tiny little bit. So it gets closer and closer and closer to the next hour. So when it's 4:20 maybe, so the big hand would be down here at the 4, the little hand wouldn't be directly on the 4. It's going to be moving ever so slightly towards the 5. So it's going to be a little bit closer to the 5. Okay, so this is how we tell time. We have to look at both hands to figure out what time it is using an analog clock. First, you look at the little hand and see the hour that it's reached last, okay? So here, it's reached 8 o'clock last. That means that we're in the 8 o'clock hour. Then you look at the minute hand and see what minute it's on. Okay, so right now it's on the 12. That means that it's exactly 8 o'clock. It's not before 8 o'clock, it's not after 8 o'clock. When the long hand is on the 12, it means that it's exactly that hour. So here, the time is 8 o'clock. You can go ahead and write that down. Okay, so what time is it on this clock? I'm going to give you guys a second to write down your answer in your paper, and then we'll discuss it. You can pause the video. Okay, so first we look at the hour hand. What's the last number the hour hand has gotten to? The last number the hour hand has gotten to is 5. So it's got to be 5 something. Now you see how this hour hand is a little bit past the 5? How it's pointing, this arrow is pointing almost directly to this little dash right after the 5? That means that it's not exactly 5 o'clock. We got to go look at the hour or the minute hand to see how many minutes past 5 it is. Because once it's gotten a little bit past the 5, we know that it's not exactly 5, it's a little bit past 5. So this is pointing to the 2. 2 times 5 is 10. So it's 5, 10. Now we don't know AM or PM, but it doesn't really matter just when we're reading the clocks. Okay, so I want you to take a guess and try to figure out what time it is here, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so this is getting tricky because you can see that our hand is closer to the 7 than it is to the 6. However, the last hour, you always look behind the minute hand, the hour hand, sorry. You always look behind the hour hand to see what time it is. So even though it's closer to the 7 here, it's actually 6 something because it hasn't quite reached the 7 yet. It's already reached the 6 and it's gone past it, okay? But it hasn't gotten to the 7 yet. That means it's not quite 7 o'clock. And if we look here at our minute hand, it looks like it's not quite at the 10. So we'll say that it's right there at the one right before the 10. So if you go 5 times 10 is 50, of course. 1 minute before that would be 49. So we could call this 6:49. I would be okay if you put down 6:50. But it just means that it's really close to 7 o'clock, but it's not quite there. Okay? So whenever you see the minute hand on the 3, that means it's something 15. In this case, it's 5:15 because the hour hand has gotten to the 5. So this is 5:15. We sometimes call this a quarter past 5 because the big hand has gone 1/4 or a quarter of the way around the clock. So if you hear someone say it's a quarter past 5, or it's a quarter past 2, or it's a quarter past 3, that means that it's 2:15, 3:15. It means that it's gone a quarter of the way. If we split this clock into 4 sections, this is 1/4 of the way around the clock. Okay? We would call this half past because it's gone the minute hand has now gone halfway around the clock. So we look back at the last hour that the hour hand passed, it's 7. So this would be half past 7, or it would be 7:30. I just want you guys to understand what people are saying when they're using this terminology. And this one. Okay, so we call this quarter to or quarter till because we have 1/4 of an hour left until we get to the next hour. Here you can see that the hour hand, the last hour that it passed is 11. So it's 11 something here. Go to the minute hand, it's right on the 9. So this would be 11:45. We would call this quarter to 12 because there's a quarter of a turn or a quarter of the circle left before we get right to 12 o'clock. Okay. So that's all I have for you for reading a clock. We're going to do some exercises with it tomorrow in class. You guys have a great night and try to find as many analog clocks to read as you can between now and class. All right, I'll see you guys later.